welcome back to the channel. Yes, I'm holding my microphone. It should be on a stand, but I'm setting up my office. Anyway, yeah, you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title. I did get Tears of the Kingdom early, and in this video, I will be giving you my early sort of first impressions for this game. Couple disclaimers. I don't want to talk about how I got this, okay? I didn't rob a bank. It wasn't any illegal activity. I purchased this. There you go. Second thing, I've only played 5 hours, but I feel like in those 5 hours, some key things happen. However, I will not be giving any sort of story spoilers or anything like that. I will be talking about very specific things that I did with this playtime, but I will be as spoiler-free as possible because, like I'll tell you later, experiencing these things is like half the fun, okay? And yes, here's the case. You really want me to open it up? Do you really think I would go to GameStop and just get an empty case? It's in my Switch. Give me a second. There. See? It's there. It's real. If you don't believe me, play Tears of the Kingdom, come back to this video. You will know that I'm 100% accurate. Also, last disclaimer, oh my God. I will not be using any new footage, and that's because Nintendo will likely take this video down if I do. They might take this video down if I don't either, but I feel like you guys want to know things, and I really want to talk about my first experience because I've been having a ton of fun. So first thing I want to talk about is the first hour of the game. And man, for everyone that loves lore and loves story, you are in for a treat. The first hour of the game is extremely cinematic, and I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's just like something that I've picked up on, but I feel like the quality of cutscenes and the quality of voice acting altogether has greatly improved. And I know it's pretty much the similar voice cast, so it's kind of weird to say that, but the cutscenes are just a very high point. Also, God, the music is just so good. Everything's so good. Now, you do start off on the Sky Islands, like Nintendo has said before, and it feels very similar to Breath of the Wild, where you are kind of on this thing, sort of like the Great Plateau, but it is a big open Sky Island, and basically what you have to do is you have to complete these shrines to get to Zelda. Your first quest is to get to Zelda. Oddly enough, you see Zelda. Now, of course, each of these shrines are getting your powers, your Ultra Hand, your Fuse ability. And I gotta say, this opening area is a lot more difficult than the Great Plateau was. Just kind of maneuvering and discovering, how to get to a certain shrine is pretty tough. The shrines themselves, I wasn't really anticipating how tough those would be either. I feel like Breath of the Wild was very easy in the sense that those powers just came very naturally. These powers don't come as naturally, for better or worse. And I'll go into that in a second. Basically, I think a lot of people are going to complain about Ultra Hand. It's a little difficult to control. I'll be completely honest. I am getting better at it 5 hours in, but the initial use of Ultra Hand, I feel like I'm constantly hitting the wrong buttons or trying to rotate things to get them just right. But just know that the powers, besides Fuse is amazing, but the Ultra Hand ability is a little tough to kind of get used to. So once you do these shrines, you get all of your powers, and then you go down to Hyrule instead of getting off the Great Plateau. In Breath of the Wild, obviously you got off the Great Plateau once you got the paraglider. In Tears of the Kingdom, you go down to the surface world, and oddly enough, you don't have the paraglider. You don't start with the paraglider. I didn't even get the paraglider once I went to I still don't have the paraglider. How do you get the paraglider in this game? But what I will say is that, when you like first leave the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild, you do get a very similar feeling in Tears of the Kingdom. Like you get that overwhelming, wow, I have a lot to do in Tears of the Kingdom now. And I was afraid that only Breath of the Wild could capture that wow feeling, but I'm happy to report that Tears of the Kingdom feels just as magical. Something I want to talk about though, and I actually did report on this from people who were playing it on Reddit and stuff, about the game's difficulty. And I said in a past video, I said, man, this game is apparently very tough. There's a lot of challenge here. Enemies aren't so nice anymore. And that is an understatement. Tears of the Kingdom has got significantly more challenge to it, almost to the point where I'm like rage quitting. Just to give you a comparison, I recently played Breath of the Wild again, right before Tears of the Kingdom. I think everyone's doing that just to get hyped and get into the Zelda mindset. And I played about 30 hours of Breath of the Wild, and I actually did have a death counter. I died about 20 times. I'm not the best player, but dying 20 times in 30 hours, that's not bad. That's pretty good. I've played 5 hours in Tears of the Kingdom, and I've died more than that. I've died probably 30 times. I'm not like, the enemies are very tough. And by the way, these are like bokoblins. So the first thing I did, oddly enough, was when you get to Hyrule, like when you get on the ground floor, you're supposed to go to this new town. I won't say where it is or what it is, but you're supposed to go to this new town to progress in the story. But what I did, because I'm, a big fan of Breath of the Wild and it just felt right, I wanted to go back to the Great Plateau. I'm not going to spoil anything about the Great Plateau, but I went back there expecting a nice friendly welcome. And that's actually where I died about 15 times. I'm not like, the Great Plateau has insane enemies. And one of them that I haven't seen anywhere, spoiler warning, there's actually these bokoblins in sort of rock armor. And they're like 5 times as tough as a normal bokoblin. And by the way, I haven't seen a red bokoblin. Those are the easiest ones. I've only seen blue is the base one. So I don't even know if there's red ones in this game. There's probably red ones in this game. But I went back to the Great Plateau and was fighting all these enemies. And I really was looking to see how different this map was from Breath of the Wild. I wanted to see changes. And I can report that everything's pretty much changed. I mean, there's similarities. Like when I went on the Great Plateau, I knew where I was going. I knew where I was. But everything pretty much has changed. I visited the Temple of Time and the Shrine of Resurrection, and I won't say what's in there, but you definitely want to check those out. They're nice nods to Breath of the Wild. After that, I headed toward the town that we were supposed to go to, and I went into a couple shrines, and I will say that the shrines have been tough as well, like very tough. There was one shrine that took me like 35 minutes. I swear I'm not bad at Zelda, but these puzzles were incredibly tough. There's actually one shrine I went into that I didn't complete. I had to leave. I didn't know what to do. And that, I think, is going back to the level of difficulty in this game, because although the enemies are tough, although the puzzles are tough, it still doesn't feel impossible. You still do feel like you have a lot of power, especially with the fuse mechanic. So one thing I will say is like your weapons are pretty weak when you get them. But fusing them to boulders or spiked balls and things like that, you definitely get, they buff up. You definitely get a lot of power with that. The one thing I'm not crazy about is the arrow situation. I have not seen elemental arrows. It was reported that they aren't in the game, but I still wanted to kind of look around. One thing I will say about the arrows, every time I shoot an arrow, I'm fusing it with something. The arrows are so weak in this game. They're basically like Breath of the Wild arrows, but if you hit the enemy in the head or whatever, they'll get stunned. But I feel like to do any sort of damage, you have to fuse it with an item. Now, the good thing is if you fuse it with an eyeball, right? When you go to fuse it, another arrow again, it'll automatically go to the eyeball. So whatever item you're fusing a lot with, it automatically goes to that, which is great. But I just feel like it does feel a little cumbersome, especially when you have a bunch of enemies, around you, because you have to fuse arrows, but it just seems a little cumbersome. Since I'm on the topic of fusing, I do think it's very seamless. It's cool so far to see what items do what. And honestly, the joy that you got while watching the reveal trailer of them fusing random items, you still do feel in Tears of the Kingdom. I think I've tried every time I pick up an item, I'm fusing it with an arrow or fusing it with a weapon and seeing what it does. And I gotta say, everything that I've picked up just makes sense, The Korok leaf, if you shoot it with an arrow, there's a gust of wind that, everything makes sense, which I really love. So fusing is very smart. It's very well done. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Last things I want to touch on is the music. The music is significantly better in Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild, I still think that's a masterpiece score. But in Tears of the Kingdom, you're getting a lot more overworld music. You're getting a lot more sounds in general, which I think is a nice change. I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. Tears of the Kingdom, I didn't really know what to expect. Breath of the Wild was like you're alone, right? So there's very subtle piano cues and stuff like that. But Tears of the Kingdom has a lot going on in terms of the music, and I really enjoy it. Okay, the very last thing, making vehicles, making things with fans on them and stuff. It's very well done in this game. You have to be very particular where you attach different items. You have to be very particular where you attach fans and steering wheels and wheels in general. But I was able to make a bunch of vehicles that were very fun to traverse Hyrule with. I actually made this one where it was very simple. It was just a big piece of board. It was just a big board and 4 tires and a steering wheel. And literally I was just driving and hitting bokoblins. It was so fun. I'm very excited to see what people make. And I think that's going to be the biggest hit. The fusing and making vehicles and things like that, it's going to be really great. But overall, I'm enjoying my time. Let me know in the comment section below. Any questions you have, I might be able to answer. Hopefully this video stays up. And I'm going to go back to playing Tears of the Kingdom. By the way, if you subscribe, I'll have a bunch of early content for you. My first video planned is just an hour of Tears of the Kingdom. So I hope you guys enjoy that. It'll just no commentary. Just me walking, dying. Subscribe, 200K.